And I feel like the more variety we can bring to that conversation, the more nuggets we can pull out, the more inspiration we can actually share, and we can learn even more.
I love to start off with something a little fun, and that is what's something about you that people may not know?
I actually meant to ask you a clarifying question about this, but I'm going to go with professional. I'm assuming you
Sure.
wanted professional, or was it personal?
I'm open.
You're open. Okay, let's go with professional because it's been very exciting for me, which is I have been a lone woman of color actually for a very long time in this field. So I've had a lot of tenure in this field, and I have really wanted to contribute to increasing the diversity of the population telling the story. Not only, of course, the people who tell the story, but also who's going to collect that data and actually tell the story. And you need to have different listeners. You have to have different people with different backgrounds, different lived realities, different perspectives, attitudes, who need to listen to what it is to be able to then bring that together into something that can be used to inspire. And what I've done is I've started working with charter schools specifically for youth who are Black and Indigenous, or Latinx, I should say. And it has been so much fun. I think the best part of this field is you get to always learn. You always learn. And I am learning more from these students than I have in a long time, which is brilliant. So that might not be something everybody knows about, but
Oh, that's great. Tell me a little bit more about those studies that you're doing with these students.
sure thing. It started actually with a wonderful sponsor at the city of Boston, a gentleman named Yo Deshpande, who just does so much on his own, even in terms of outreach. And he was part of MONIM, which is the Mayor's Office of New Urban Mechanics. So that first study was with them. Being the city of Boston, it could be a public study. It was about surveillance technology and understanding how people consume and engage with surveillance technology in the city of Boston. And you can imagine it's a touchy subject for a lot of people of color. It was wonderful to be able to embed it in a moment for kids ranging from like 15 to 20 years old, to be able to really think about the agency that they have, how they engage with this surveillance technology, how they might agree or disagree with how it's positioned, how they might ask questions about it. Because at the end of the day, every city does want to connect with their constituents. I do believe that. Some cities do it better than others. And some cities really want to make sure that they are getting all different age ranges, where we tend to settle into a particular age range. In this particular situation, it was a study that started us off, and students were able to start looking into this, not only do an autoethnography, they were also able to go and talk to people in their friends and family circles and collect a little bit of data in order to be able to come back and discuss it. We find topics like this that are basically shareable, if that's a word, and be able to talk about it openly and in a way have them present back where we respect anybody who wants to be anonymous, anybody who doesn't want their name out there, but simply expose them to the process so that they understand that's potentially a career for them to consider if they enjoyed it. So it was
Wow.
great. Like, so much fun. So much, like, students would come up to me and be like, can I do this for like nickel? Because I have a particular anxiety, or I have a particular this, and I know somebody who's suffering from this. And it was interesting how people came back almost immediately and asked me, is it only for surveillance technology? I'm like, no, that's far too many different things.
Absolutely. That's so true. Meena, tell me a little bit more as a woman of color why you were passionate about communicating with others and broadening people's perspectives, perhaps.
Thank you. That's a really good question. It's been a journey for me too. I grew up in Canada. I have always been around people multiculturally, but when I started to get into this field, I noticed it wasn't quite as diverse. But at that moment in time, it was about when you're earlier on in your career, I think you're just there to learn. You don't know if you have the voice to project just yet. But as I started to progress from learning, it's not that the learning ever stopped, but I got to a point where I felt a little bit more confidence in, hey, I actually can speak to something here, or I can actually share something, or I now have a number of years of experience. It was important for me to understand that I would always reach back into my head. I'm very visual in my own head. So I feel like I literally go back and I go into my treasure trove of experiences that I've gone through that sometimes shape why somebody would have said something. Like what made them say that? Like what drove them? What drove a participant to actually respond a certain way? And I have found under several circumstances, I'd bring something up and the team around me might be like, that's really interesting. We never thought about it that way. And it doesn't make them good or bad. It just is that their interaction with the world in their life has been different. And I feel like the more variety we can bring to that conversation, the more nuggets we can pull out, the more inspiration we can actually share. And we can learn even more because if I say something that's from my personal, like my past is very fun and exciting and very different even from somebody who identifies as being East Indian and has grown up in the United States. My personal experience is vastly different from what they would have, even my own children now. It's very different. So how do we actually tap into that as a superpower that each and every one of us have, should we choose to be researchers? How can we bring that to the forefront to encourage and to inspire and to excite in different ways? Because to me, that is a lot of what qualitative research is. And it acts as such a wonderful vehicle, present potential, if that's fair to say, to a design team. So
Yeah.
it was very important to me to do
Yeah.
that.
I love that. You think about so many products that are being built in Silicon Valley in a tech bubble without that diverse perspective, and you see the outcomes when the product gets released.
Yes. And beyond the fact that it is just good to have multiple voices always, and there's so much, I want to say obvious good, air quotes that word obvious. But to me, it is actually just so much deeper because it's what we do, right? We look at people and we assume who they are or assume we know so much about them. I love when people surprise me. I don't want to assume anything. I love when I go and I met somebody a few weeks back and they seemingly visually to me would not have known an Indian language and suddenly started asking me where I was from. And I'm like, I'm from Canada. And what, do you know any Indian languages? Well, yes, I do. And they started breaking out into a language with me. And again, I had a smile on my face. I didn't go, oh, well, what are you doing speaking this language? Like, it's the excitement of it. Whoa. Yeah, hey, like a Kung Fu Panda moment, like Poe. Like, it's a whoa moment where it's so much fun to hear that somebody's doing something that I didn't expect, which just always makes it very clear to me that I have to keep myself, even as a researcher, with checks and balances to never assume anything. Yeah, it's tons of fun.